Welcome back to your stage, our hosts, Vic and Dahlia.
San Francisco. Check. Oh, it's good to be back.
Please stop quoting Iron Man
All right,
from the
so I
morning.
won't. It's always last time.
Good.
Good morning. I hope.
Good
I hope
morning,
you had a
everyone.
good time, right?
Yeah, we did. Good morning, everyone. Hope you enjoyed yesterday. Welcome to day 2. We're very happy to see all of you here today. This morning, we have many interesting sessions in store for you today. And we're finishing off day 2 with what's personally my favorite part, the awards ceremony. So please make sure to attend it this afternoon at the end.
And I don't want to delay more the thing that you all collected here to learn what's going to be a future in Kong. And for this, I would like to invite on stage the man, the myth, the legend, Vice President of the product at Kong, Reza.
Woo!
Kong began as a concept in 2009 when a couple of friends rented a garage and started building. But today, over 10 trillion API calls per month. The most popular API gateway on GitHub with more than 67,000 stars. 300 million Kong gateway downloads and counting. We couldn't have achieved this without you. You contributed thousands of lines of code each year. You've championed Kong across the world. And you've connected with each other across more than 80 meetup groups on every major continent. Help us continue to innovate and improve the world of APIs. Get involved today at konghq.com/community. Kong, by developers, for developers.
I remember it really well. It was summer of 2015. It was at a previous company in the API management space that I was working at. I was with my CTO. We were on the phone. That company's name started with an M, and it has something to do with donkeys. Now, we were on the phone with one of Gartner's best analysts, Ann Thomas May. And as we were briefing her, she asked us a question. She said, how does your solution address microservices? That's when we had to put the phone on mute. My CTO and I looked at each other, and we had to improvise. We really didn't know what she was talking about. We said, well, microservices are just like APIs, right? And then she went on. How does your solution deal with DevOps? How about containers? It was a tough call. So that's when I realized that the API management platform that we've worked so hard on building over the last 3 years, the whole way that the world was doing API management, in fact, was dead. Or at least API management as we knew it back then was going to die. Why? Because so much was changing. And in the last 7 or so years, so much has changed. The infrastructure on which we deploy our applications has completely changed. We've moved from virtualized environments to containerized environments. The actual architecture of the applications themselves have fundamentally changed. There is no such thing as monoliths for new applications anymore, whereas back then, it was all monoliths. We hadn't heard of the concept of microservices. And importantly, the way the changes to these applications are applied day to day has changed. When we were in a system where everything was done through a ticket-based model, changes were done maybe once a week. Now every piece of the application can change, literally dozens of times a week, culminating to hundreds of changes potentially a week. So everything has changed. So if API management is dead, what has it been replaced with? Well, back around the same time as fate would have it, summer of 2015. This is a true story. not too far from here, in a basement. Two young Italian founders were working on their startup. This startup also started with M, had something to do with monkeys, my shape. And when they looked around, they couldn't find the right type of API gateway. They wanted something that worked well with containerization. They wanted an API gateway that was extremely fast. They wanted an API gateway that was lightweight. They wanted an API gateway that had a fully programmatic interface. So, young and foolish as they were, what did they do? They're like, we're going to just write this thing ourselves. And in this particular case, they didn't know it at the time, but they created the world's most popular API gateway, the Kong gateway. And they learned from this experience. They learned that they needed to stay ahead of the technology. They needed to stay ahead of what you needed, what our users needed, what our customers needed. And throughout these 7 years, when they saw that Kubernetes was taking hold, they brought all the power of Kong gateway to Kubernetes through the Kong Ingress Controller. And now Kong Ingress Controller is one of the most powerful ingress controllers out there, one of the most popular ingress controllers out there. When they saw that the mesh space was too complex, it wasn't addressing the actual needs of our customers, which was a journey from virtualized world to Kubernetes world, so needed to address both virtualized and Kubernetes environments, they created Kuma, the open source project, and Kong Mesh, the product on top of it. And last but not least, when they saw that the dev tools that API developers were using for both creating APIs and consuming APIs were too heavyweight, were too bloated, were getting in the way of the developers, we acquired Insomnia 3 years ago, the most popular open source API dev tool, and we've been investing in it ever since. What brings this modern cloud-native API tech stack together is Kong Connect. We introduced Kong Connect a year ago. And Kong Connect does 3 things. First, today, it makes the actual runtime, running and provisioning of Kong gateways much simpler. It makes the day-2 operation of Kong gateways much simpler. Over time, it's going to do that to all these other peripheral nervous system components you see at the top. Second, Kong Gateway enables platform builders, platform specialists, to provide a self-service interface to the actual application teams while providing a central governance view, a federated central governance view. Third, it provides applications like Portal, like analytics, like a service catalog on top of all of these peripheral systems as a service. So you can actually then understand where all your services are, how they are doing, have operational and business metrics on top of them, productize them, and more coming up. So we have the central nervous system of the cloud, that's the Kong Connect, and the peripheral system. That's the different components we have at the top. So this is the new cloud-native API stack that has replaced previous generation API management stacks. Now, we all know, you all know, that for any strategic initiative, any strategic outcomes, those outcomes that Marco talked about yesterday, to be successful, it doesn't just take technology. This technology we stand behind will continue to look at the future and innovate on it by working in collaboration with you. But there's 2 other components. You need the people, that's you, but also the processes and practices. And the processes and practices have also changed over the last 7 years. They've fundamentally changed. And when it comes to APIs, the cloud-native processes is something we call API Ops. API Ops brings together the practices of DevOps and GitOps and marries them together with the way APIs are managed. What does API Ops mean? A couple of things. First, it means that the actual gateway and the mesh should be an implementation detail to the developers. We don't need the developer team to actually know that there's a gateway running in the background, just the same way as we don't need the dev teams to know that there's Kubernetes running in the background. The dev teams want to be focused on developing business logic, on innovating on the business logic so they can deliver strategic business outcomes for your organization. And APIs is at the core of that. We all know, we've heard all of the different meetings and we've talked to each other on this. We understand that. So how do we get those dev teams to focus on those strategic business outcomes? Well, by abstracting the runtime layer, by letting them deal with work with the tools they're comfortable with, Git as a version control system, whatever IDE they want to use. You know, Saju here loves Emacs. Some of you like VI. That's okay. And Insomnia enables those developers to have specialized capabilities around consumption of those APIs and around creation of those APIs, and also enables them to then generate configuration that then gets mapped to the right runtime. But then in the middle, the CI/CD pipelines come into place. That's where you do your automated validation. That's where you do your automated testing. Automation, automation, automation in the middle. That's what API Ops is. So let's show you how Insomnia can be used to do API Ops. And with that, let me welcome on stage Sunny Shia.
So today I'm going to wear a hat of an API developer, where I work for Kong Airway. I wanted to develop an API endpoints that receive user feedback about individual flight. I'm going to apply API Ops that Reza just talked about to create a design specs in Insomnia and generate a declarative Kong gateway configuration file through a single command line experience, and finally deploy a real gateway instance into Connect runtime group. Let me get started. So I wanted to call this design spec feedback.
We're not quite seeing it yet, Sunny. Let's see. There we go.
All right. So let's create this file. And today I'm going to follow Open API standard. And for every single Open API standard spec, I need to include a boilerplate code. So let me do that quickly.
So we're designing the API here.
Exactly. That's what we're doing right now. I'm thinking I want to develop two endpoints. The first is the get endpoint, where I can receive all the feedback created by the user.
Now, I noticed that you've got two things here that are a little different, right? You've got the wiggly lines, and then you've got the thing that says rule sets. I've never seen this in Insomnia. What is all this all about?
Yes. So first and foremost, Insomnia validates against the industry-recognized Open API standard. It helps API developer, myself in this case, to identify the gaps in the API design specs and follow the best practice. So one of the feedback I got here is that I need to add the response code for my get endpoints. So let me do that quickly.
Interesting. So the rules are provided to us around how we can create best practices and apply best practices, build secure APIs, things like that.
Exactly. But Insomnia goes beyond. We will be releasing an innovative feature that will actually allow the customer to generate a custom rule that best tailored to their own business context and business needs. Now, before I show you the rule, let me finish my design. So I want to create another endpoint, post endpoint. Let me add it quickly. Awesome. As you can see, I've already created and designed two endpoints following the Open API specs. Now, as we discussed earlier, we want to develop a specific rule that only tailored to my own business needs. For the demo purpose, I create a very simple rule that called every single tag needs to have a description. Make sure I set a function as choosy. So if I go back to the design specs, and let's see what happens if I remove the description.
So we're not following the best practices. And we know that because the rule set is telling us that, right?
Exactly. Well, it tells me what kind of corporate specific requirements that I need to follow through those feedback mechanisms.
That's cool. So now what if I am like our VP of Engineering, Saju, and I like VI a lot, right? I want to still verify this in the CLI. Can I do that?
Of course.
Cool.
So all the steps that I perform through the web application here can also be performed through INSO CLI. As you can see, I received the same feedback here.
And like you can put that in the CI pipeline as well, right? So you can actually test that out.
Exactly. API Ops is all about automation and direct integration with your CI/CD pipeline. So let me add description here.
And the errors are gone. That's great.
I'm confident that my API specs is ready to go.
So we've done the CI testing, the stack is good to go. How do we get this now to the Kong gateway and deploy it there, right?
Let me show you quickly. So the next step is to use INSO CLI, one command line, to generate the declared Kong gateway configuration file here. Awesome.
Wow, can you do this? I mean, this is deck, right? This is deck config. Can you also do it for Kubernetes, like the ingress controller?
Of course, we do support Kubernetes.
Great.
As Reza mentioned, the next step is for me to use Deck, another very powerful CLI tool, Deck Sync, to deploy actual gateway instance into Connect. Awesome. So later on, all the routes, the paths that I have created here will be reflected in Connect UI, and you will be able to inspect all the details there.
Awesome. This is great.
I'm super excited.
Thank you so much, Sunny.
Of course, if you have any further questions about all the demos we provide today, email airway@konghq.com. Looking forward to hearing from you.
All right. Thank you. All right, so we saw that the CI/CD pipeline effectively abstracts the runtime from the developers. But remember, even though the runtime is an implementation detail to the developers, it matters. It needs to be robust. It needs to be secure. And in order to handle the type of automation we just saw, it needs to be automatable. It also needs to be flexible so you can actually address all of the different traffic management needs you have out there. That's the baseline of the Kong gateway. The Kong gateway became so popular because it's fully automatable. It provides an admin API out of the box. It has a command line for doing GitOps through Deck. Also, the Kong gateway provides you resiliency. One of my favorite anecdotes over the last year was a call I had with one of our big banking customers. And they had just done a full stress test on their environment, a full performance load stress test on their environment. And as I got into the Zoom, I saw there was a bit of gloomy faces. And I asked what's going on. They said, well, you know what? We just did this stress test and everything fell apart. I thought we were going to have a tough call. Said, was everything okay? It was like, you know what, don't worry. Kong was the only thing standing after our stress test. That's good. So that's the baseline. But we introduced Kong Gateway 3.0 this week. And I am extremely excited about the capabilities that the Gateway 3.0 brings to the picture. Not just the Gateway 3.0, but also the satellites, the ecosystem around it. Of course, the Kong Ingress controller has a new version that now supports Kong Gateway 3.0. We've also introduced a new Kubernetes operator that works with Kong Gateway 3.0. that automates day two operations for Kong Gateway, such as upgrading. The folks who were here yesterday at the tail end for the closing keynote saw that in action. Kong Gateway 3.0 introduces really exciting capabilities and amplifies the automation, the resiliency, and the traffic management capabilities I was just talking about. So with the Kubernetes operator, that's one thing. Day two operations, we're just at the beginning of that with backing things up, with being able to upgrade. Backups are coming up next. We also are supporting now the Kubernetes gateway APIs in our ingress controller. This is a big deal because it makes all of the gateway operations on Kubernetes be standards. And we spearheaded the effort to work with the community to come up with those standards as part of a special interest group. The resiliency capabilities of the Gateway 3.0 are also amplified. We have a new secret manager that allows you to take any given field and declare it a secret, and that gets automatically managed with an external secret manager. More on that in a bit. We have now open telemetry support that allows you to trace end-to-end every single request through the gateway and beyond for any component in the upstream that supports open telemetry. And that works out of the box with any monitoring solution that has open telemetry support. We're going to show you that in a bit. We're now FIPS 140-2 compliant. This is huge for the government organizations out there. In terms of the traffic management, you all know that Kong Gateway has thousands of plugins out there. That's huge. The community keeps building plugins for us. The long tail of plugins is what makes it so powerful. Well, the capabilities of the Kong Gateway plugin management have further been enhanced. We have plugin ordering now, so you can move around those plugins and change the order in which they happen and execute. We have now native support for WebSockets, so your plugins can actually examine the WebSocket frames and manage them. And we have a new routing domain-specific language. What that does is not only gives you more powerful capabilities around specifying the routing rules in terms of how requests come in, where they should be directed. It's so flexible and cool that the engineering team internally called it air traffic control. But also it improves the performance capabilities of the Kong Gateway when running in hybrid mode. So the Kong Gateway 3.0 is a really powerful release. It's our first major release in 18 months. And I couldn't be happier that it's out there for you to use it. I wanted to drill into security. You know, we all know that security is critical. But one doesn't have to look back too far to know why security is critical. Just last week, Optus, 10 million user accounts were compromised. Do you know what population of Australia is? What percentage of the population of Australia that is? 40%. The hackers were demanding a ransom of 1 million. The government of Australia wants to fine Optus 10 million. They said that what happened is equivalent to leaving the windows open at night. And that was the API that was left unsecure. Security is critical when it comes to APIs because APIs open the gate to the functionality into your organization. Everything your organization does is exposed to API, we know that. But if it's not secure, then that is going to be a challenge. So what you see in this slide on those circles is the 10 practices that cybersecurity experts say we need to follow in order to make sure our APIs are secure. And the Kong Gateway enables you to do all of this. The 3.0 version of the Kong Gateway further amplifies all those capabilities around authorization, our open policy agent support, our encryption capabilities, our role-based access control. All of that was around before 3.0. With 3.0, our secret manager now enables you to manage the tokens and any other property of your API that must be sensitive with HashiCorp Vault, with GCP Secret Manager, and with the AWS Secret Manager. Couple that with the new FIPS 140-2 compliance, the security capabilities of the Kong 3.0 are even further there to help you make sure what happened to Optus doesn't happen to you. All right, so we've heard about Kong Gateway, we heard about API Ops, we heard that API management is dead, and a new stack and a new process has taken over. But let's see this all in action with Dervis Advik, who comes from IKEA and who we started working with 2 years ago and who's been through this exact journey. And by the way, they know a couple of things or two about modularization. So let me welcome on stage Dervis.
Hi, man.
Dervis.
Hi.
So Dervis, I remember when we started our discussions about 2 years ago, it was.
Yes.
And this journey has been amazing, but I'm trying to remember, what was the state of the world around your APIs back then when you started approaching us?
Yeah, good question. So we started our first journey at 2016 using an old API management platform at that time, which we had a lot of thoughts about, was it actually dead or not? We had very less insight in the platform. We had a hard time building capabilities on top of the platform, and we were really struggling with it, right? Because the platform is the foundation that helps the engineer build products to meet the customer in the store, in the app, everywhere. Around 2019, 20, that's where it all starts happening. We started looking into Kong, for example. Helps us power all the capabilities that we needed for the engineers. And that's when it took off. We had a lot of more APIs, more teams onboarded, we went faster, and we were able to scale in IKEA.
Cool. So you took the replacement project in 2019. And what's the state of the world now? How many different teams, how many APIs roughly?
So we're running around 100 plus teams, 150. We have more than 300 APIs and like 10,000 million API requests going through. And with the request in IKEA, if you think about it, you don't do a lot of requests until you go to a checkout, right? Mm-hmm. So you find a product, you put it in the cart, go to the checkout, and you're done.
Find the assembly instructions.
Exactly.
Yes.
That could be the tricky part.
Cool. So tell me more about the future. So you all have created this platform, there's 100 team plus on it, that's great. What do you see in the future, in terms of continuous improvement on this?
So if we're gonna meet new markets and new business opportunities, so let's say we started with the store, and IKEA.com, we have the app, what's next, right? Mm-hmm. That's about having APIs, but not just APIs. They need to be reusable, right? Exactly as our flatpak concept. Mm-hmm. We create same products from the same. And for the future, we see that a lot focus on developer experience, because that's the key to help us scale.
Developers.
Exactly.
Great. Well, I look forward to working with you and the team at IKEA going forward in this transformation journey. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Darvis.
Thank you.
All right. Now, I want to bring up a topic that might be a little bit sensitive. In the last 2-3 years, I've been meeting many of you, and the topic of data transformations in the gateway comes up very often. Now, I know many of you believe that one shall not put data transformation or business logic in the gateway. But the thing is, many of you still do it. And so we started digging into why that is. And the reason why we learned that this is happening was because there's practical needs around doing that. There are unsupported formats and protocols out there that you want to modernize, like SOAP-based web services protocols. Sometimes you need to do a quick data filtering on one of the back-end APIs. Well, you can't go put that in the backlog of the application team because that might take longer than you need. The presentation layer, the UIs, might have different needs. They need to go at a faster pace. And again, you might need to make minor modifications to the backend APIs in a rapid way. But yet, it is true that one should not put data transformations in the gateway. We believe that. So when we looked at what we could do to help, what we realized was Kong, the runtime, provides a couple of capabilities around dynamic configuration, automation, just even the plugin model, and the fact that everything can run at Kong native speed that makes it ideal for actually driving transformations. But at the same time, Kong doesn't have to act as the gateway only. Kong can act as a data transformation engine. So you can actually separate the concerns, have your gateways and have your Kongs doing data transformations. But something was missing. Today, many of you are doing this through messy custom plugins and Lua code and such, which is not very manageable. So today, I'm really excited to announce a project called Kayak. Kayak is cloud-native data transformations at play. Let me explain what it is and why we think it's cloud-native. So I think most people here know about WASM-X. WASM-X was announced last year. We just made it tech preview this year. And what WASM-X does, it enables you to build traffic management logic or Kong gateway executable logic in any of the supported languages, JavaScript, Golang, Rust, C++. And so expands the set of developers you can target for creating Kong customizable capabilities, but does so at Kong native speed. Why? Because that code gets compiled into WASM and runs natively on the Kong gateway. This is going to be really powerful stuff for Kong gateway in general. But when we saw that, we thought about that data transformation issue. And we said, okay, well, what if we could marry the two? And that's what Kayak does. With Kayak, we created a new DSL called KScript. It's made to make data transformations very easy to create, to build. In fact, there's a demo later today at 4 o'clock. There's a whole session on this. If you want to go, you'll see what we'll show there is a transformation that in Rust would take about 200 to 300 lines of code and 3 files can be done in about 5 to 6 lines in KScript. And that's a SOAP to REST transformation. So Kayak enables you to create those transformations and run them on Kong runtimes at Kong native speed. And this way, you'll be able to have Kong gateways doing what they're supposed to do, pure gateways, and Kong kayaks that are running your transformations on the side. We're very excited about this. It should be coming out in tech preview over time. I'm hoping that at next year's summit, I'll be able to announce much more progress on this and make sure it's in your hands for deployment. So looking forward to that. Okay, so API management is dead. We talked about the new stack. We talked about the process and practices that have taken hold and replaced API management as we knew it. But we haven't talked about governance. And to talk about governance, I want to introduce the concepts of swimming pools. Who here is a swimmer? A couple of hands. I like to swim once in a while myself. And I have to go to a shared swimming pool, Olympic-sized swimming pool, ideally would be good. And I get my own swim lane, if it's not busy. And see, I have to tell you, I'm always a little bit uncomfortable because I'm not a good swimmer. And so I'm worried about the other swimmers in their swim lanes. And then, if there are kids in the pool, it gets iffy sometimes, So I would way rather have my own swimming pool. But the problem is it costs too much. Not everybody who likes swimming can have their own swimming pool. Well, the same problem exists in platforms, governance, and infrastructure. Ideally, you can give everyone their own infrastructure. You can give everyone their own Kong control plane. But that's going to cost you a lot. And it's going to be hard to maintain, and it's going to be ungovernable. So how do we have our cake and eat it too? Well, with Kong Connect, we believe you can do that. Remember I said Kong Connect does three things. Kong Connect enables you to run your data planes in your own environment, on any cloud. That is supported today, on your own data centers in any cloud. But just the data planes, which have the lowest amount of operational complexity. We operate the control plane for you and take away the burden of that complexity and provide you with an SLA. The second thing that it does is that it allows you to create the swim lanes, but in a way that looks like they're just dedicated swimming pools. That's what we call runtime groups. Each runtime group is a dedicated Kong control plane to any given tenant that you might have for your platform. And that keeps configuration scoping completely isolated. That gives you the ability to do RBAC on the whole thing so that the right people only see the right stuff. So that gives you that governance model. And the third thing, remember, is then enables you to create a central catalog of all your APIs through something we call Service Hub. It enables you to take those services and productize it to make sure they're searchable and discoverable. And it's got full analytics, operational today, but business analytics coming up, and I'll talk more about that very soon. And one last thing. Every single runtime group is like a control plane, remember? So if you're doing API ops using Deck, for example, or if you're using the admin API, well, you can take the tools you've built around that type of operational model, and you can just use them against a runtime group. So moving from an on-prem to a runtime group could be as simple as a Deck apply command. So without further ado, I want to bring on stage Frank van Valkenburg, who is a business integration architect at Rabobank. We started working with Rabobank 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and the progress they've had in enabling Connect and in actually implementing a platform program with it, leveraging the runtime groups and teams concept, has just been phenomenal. But let me stop talking and let's hear it directly from Frank.
Thanks, Reza. I'm Frank van Valkenburg, Business Architect Integration at Rabobank. Rabobank is one of the 3 largest banks in the Netherlands. But based on our philosophies, we have been approaching API management somewhat different than most other large companies. We have some 600 DevOps teams, which we call squads. Every squad has their own distinct responsibility, typically one or more business applications. And every squad is ideally front to back responsible for these applications, with the main goal to make them autonomous and as little dependent on other squads as possible. In total, we're talking about some 2,400 APIs at the moment, and it's growing. Rabobank has a multi-cloud strategy where every squad or even every application gets their own separated environment in the cloud. And consumption of APIs, very importantly, is done over public networks, no longer over private networks. Now, making squads responsible for building and maintaining their own APIs is one thing. Making them responsible for maintaining an API platform is another thing. That requires specialist knowledge. And that is why Rabobank offers the squads a central API management platform, a shared platform which is compelling and easy to use for squads because it saves them the trouble of having to manage an API platform themselves. But most importantly, it is a self-service platform. And we've been doing API management this way for the last 4 to 5 years already. But our current platform is end of life and no longer living up to the requirements we have. So we need to replace that platform. And the challenge with selecting a replacement platform has been that not a single API management vendor fully supported our single platform self-service operating model, at least not out of the box. So why did we eventually choose Kong as the basis for our new API management platform? A couple of reasons. First, The primary focus of Kong is API management, which is important for us. Secondly, we align on visions. Rabobank wants a SaaS-based management plane, but distributed gateways in the various environments we have following the application workloads. Both Kong and Rabobank believe in lightweight integrations. Logic should be in applications, not in APIs. And both Kong and Rabobank believe in automating the crap out of everything. Thirdly, Kong delivers lightweight runtimes, which facilitates our operating model where every team or even every application gets their own isolated gateway. And fourthly, but most importantly, we have found Kong to be very willing to think along with us and even involve product management to facilitate the requirements we have on our API management platform. We will be using Connect as the central management plane from Kong, and that is where we define the 600 squads in separate runtime groups. Now, this concept of using isolated lightweight gateways per squad or even per application supports the security requirement Rabobank has to segregate workloads from different squads or applications, and it does it very nicely. And finally, we have a central integration catalog in which we publish all the reusable services, not only APIs on the central API management platform, but also, for example, eventing topics on our Kafka platform. At this moment, our teams are very busy implementing this new API management platform, and they're doing this in close cooperation with Kong. So in next year's Kong Summit, I expect to be here physically with my colleagues to present you a success story of how we've implemented exactly this platform that I've been talking about. Back to you, Reza.
Gosh, I just love that video. I've been watching it like so many times since we got it about 4 days ago. I was even showing it to my kids, and they're like, they couldn't find it as interesting as me for some reason, but it's just so good. It just undermines, it just highlights, I should say, every single piece of philosophy we have in how we see the world and how we're building our product. That's why I love it so much. Look, what Frank was talking about is something we call federated governance at scale, and something we're seeing very often out there, right? Platform teams want to enable developer teams to go fast. They want them to be able to innovate, but they want them to do so with some guardrails. They want them to do it in a way that builds consumable APIs. They want them in a way that reuses existing API assets they have, and they want to do it in a way that's secure, resilient, automatable, all the stuff we were talking about before, right? And what Connect enables is it enables you to do that. As a central nervous system of the cloud, and enables the peripheral teams to build these APIs that way. So, enough talking. Let's show you runtime groups and teams in action. And for that, let me bring Smriti Jaggi, our Senior Product Manager for Connect Platform, on stage.
Thank you so much. Oh, no. Thank you so much for having me here today, Reza. Let's take a look at the Runtime Manager.
Let's do it.
So when I log into Connect for the first time, I will land on Runtime Manager. Runtime Manager is a great way to logically separate out environments, business units, etc. These are the swim lanes that you referred earlier during your talk. For my particular organization, I have chosen to use environments as my separation unit. So that's why you will see production and staging on my Runtime Manager. I'm using a blue-green deployment model, which is why we have production blue, production green, staging blue, and staging green. Let's take a look at production blue. Here you can see that I have 3 runtime instances that are running. All of them are running on the latest version of Kong Gateway, which is 3.0. And I have actually deployed them on my Google Kubernetes engine. Let's take a look at what that looks like.
Before you go there, Smriti, you know what I find interesting here is that all of those objects on the left hand, those are basically the same objects as Kong Gateway's Kong Manager shows, right?
Exactly. Those are the same objects.
Very cool.
So within my Google Kubernetes engine, I can see that all of my runtime groups actually map to Kubernetes clusters. And this is the same replication of what I see inside Kong Manager. inside Runtime Manager. So when I go into one such cluster, or my production blue, to continue my example, you will see that all of my runtime instances actually map to pods. What is interesting here is that not just can we deploy this on GCP, we can actually deploy on any cloud provider of your choice. We have AWS, Azure, you name it. We can also deploy it on any infrastructure or any environment that you want, including on-prem, which is what makes Kong the most flexible deployment options that's out there.
I think that's super interesting. So the other interesting thing is you mapped it to the different clusters, right? But can you share a cluster and have different runtime groups on the same cluster?
You absolutely can.
Cool.
So when I go back into my runtime group, you can see that it's its own independent control plane. It has its services, routes, certificates, plugins, you name it.
Very cool. And then here, we're seeing some latency as well, no? Or actually, before that, let me just think. This is a little bit problematic for me, because what if someone has full access to everything? This scares me a bit.
That is a scary idea for sure, which is why Connect provides you a very fine-grained permission systems. You can take advantage of our out-of-the-box predefined teams to give access to your users, or you could create your own custom teams that have a granular set of permissions that is based on services, runtime groups, or even regions like North America or Europe. So that way you can control who has access to what.
Great. OK, I feel better.
Let's take a look at these gateway services. The feedback service that Sunny had created through Deck is actually available to me here inside my Runtime Manager itself. I can go into the service, and I can see all of the information related to the service here itself. I'm going to come back to your question here, Reza, about the types of analytics that we see inside Runtime Manager.
Yeah, how's the latency doing on this one?
So we have a P99 latency, which is about 497 milliseconds.
I wonder where that's all going.
That's a very good question. Now, even though P99 latency means that 99% of my traffic is seeing less latency than this, but 497 is definitely high. So let's figure out if we can identify where this latency is actually coming from. I'm going to go into my plugins. I'm going to give you a sneak peek into my plugin hub.
That's cool. This is an OpenTelemetry plugin right there, right?
I have an OpenTelemetry plugin, which is a 3.0 compatible plugin, the latest gateway that came out.
Right.
I'm going to enable that plugin. I have actually configured my plugin to work with Datadog so that I can figure out why and where we are seeing this latency. So let's go into Datadog. I'm going to refresh this here and pick an instance that is seeing the high latency. OK, let's take a one that says 236 milliseconds. That's pretty high, too.
Cool.
What we're seeing here is this balancer try 1, which is seeing 236 milliseconds of the latency. This is actually the upstream. So almost all of the time is actually taken on the upstream.
How much of it is Kong taking?
This teeny tiny box that you see over here, which says 700 or 9 microseconds,
wow.
That's the time taken by the Kong gateway itself in the entire transaction.
That's what we call Kong native speed.
That is correct. So when I come back here, all of these instances or all of my runtimes actually roll up to my service hub, and I can see that in the service hub itself. But before we go there, I want to take you to another thing that's on my screen. You can see here I have North America and Europe. Now what this means is Connect is designed to support data residency requirements for various regions. For my example, I'm only using North America and Europe, but what this means is any data, any services or runtime groups that I define in North America are specific to North America, and anything that I have in Europe will be specific to Europe.
And so it gives you single pane of glass with data compliance in mind.
Exactly. So if we go to our Europe region, we can see that our runtime instances will be different from what we saw in the US. And to make it very clear, I have actually used different colors for my production. So I'm seeing a red and a yellow here instead of the blue-green that I was seeing in the US.
Very cool. Tell us more about that catalog. You know, I want to have that central catalog of my services that Gabriela showed off yesterday.
Exactly. So this becomes, everything that we've defined so far into our runtime manager rolls up into Service Hub to become that central catalog of APIs.
Is it searchable?
This is searchable. You can filter here by name.
OK, very cool. Awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, Reza.
So Connect has come a long way in the last year. We're able to deploy, I think it was 300 updates a month to Connect at this point, and new features have been coming in. It's one of the things I love about Connect, is that we're able to elevate the capabilities real time with all of you and give you that benefit. No more waiting for the next release. It's just going to be there. And we have much more capabilities right around the corner. We're going to have, on the portal side, we're creating API capabilities for the portal itself. On the analytics side, we're creating the ability to have business metrics, as I mentioned. You'll be able to query the number of services that might have not the right security posture from your perspective. We're also creating custom dashboards for you to be able to create. On the platform side, we're further enabling things with things like audit trails. And there's going to be a capability to enable self-service for you to update your own custom plugins. Today, you have to give that to us, but we'll have that as a self-service model. But here's the thing. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We are going very fast in terms of innovation on Connect and on our runtimes, Kong Enterprise, Kong Mesh, Kong Ingress Controller, and Insomnia. And I cannot wait to be here with you, hopefully a much bigger audience, to show you all of the other capabilities we'll be introducing on Kong Connect and within our runtimes, and as we create this next generation nervous system of the cloud together. So thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you, Reza. Thank you for this insightful keynote. When the keynote was on, we were talking in the green room with Dali, and Dali told me that she's actually a professional swimmer. She was a part of national team. What was your freestyle time on the 100 meter?
56.
Okay.
I'll take you down any day, Victor, so don't even try.
Yeah, my time would be, 30 seconds behind, like 120.
All right, let's get serious now.
Let's get serious. Let's get to back to business. So next speaker is going to be sharing some of the real-world examples from financial industry and the banking sector. It's going to be very
eye-opening.
Eye-opening, yes, and it's going to be like very, very. I'm looking forward to learn more about this, and Dale will introduce them.
All right. So without further ado, we're so happy to have in person here Gareth Ainsworth and Jen Goodison from HSBC.
Woo!
Good morning. Good morning.
Hello.
I think the challenge is follow that. How do we follow something like that? Is we bring you right down. You've seen the level of detail. You've seen the fantastic things that are happening with Kong. But we want to talk about why HSBC. Why have they invited a large global bank to talk about Kong, about its capabilities, and why it makes such a difference to us? So first of all, we won't take you down to that level of detail. We want to try and change the way that we talk about our technology choices and the way that we talk about our partnerships. And to do that, we need to take you on a bit of a journey. We need to take you on a transformation journey, not of just of APIs, but of people, of culture, of technology. So who is HSBC? So we're a global banking organization up there in the tier 1 level of banks. That means if something fails in the global banking system, somebody goes to jail. And I never realized that until I joined a bank. But if you fail, somebody's responsible for that failure, and the penalty is quite severe. You talk about resilience, yeah? If something in Kong fails, which it doesn't, by the way, yeah? If something in Kong fails, or something in any other vendor product fails, and that results in a failure in our service, it's had quite serious implications. Yeah? Somebody could go to jail if our service is not resilient. Somebody could go to jail if our APIs are not resilient, if our perimeter's not resilient. So again, why HSBC? Why Kong? Who is HSBC? I've told you, we're a global financial services organization. 50, 60 countries, 144 languages, numbers that you may be familiar with, 100,000 containers running on multiple different platform choices, 12 to 15,000 APIs running across those 100,000 containers. I say 12 to 15,000 APIs because I'm not sure.
We don't know.
I don't know where my APIs are. I don't know who's consuming them. I'm reminded yesterday of that picture that we saw of the lone guy standing out on the pier looking into the distance. Somebody please call me. That's why we're here. We're here to talk about the complexity of our organization and the cultural changes. So, enough from me. First of all, many thanks to Reza, many thanks for Kong for inviting us. We wanted to try and do a little bit on the fly from what we saw from the keynote this morning. We're a gateway, we're a 2.x gateway, enterprise gateway customer. We're in year one of our multiple year journey with Kong and the partnership that I'm so pleased about. I think I need to go back to our commercial relationship terms with Kong now and see what I have paid for and what I haven't paid for. Because there's some really cool stuff in there that I'd like. I don't know about you, Jen. What have you seen?
Yeah, I'm all about the API ops. So of those 12 to 15,000 APIs, most of them are mine. And I can't tell you the number. So I'll have spoken to many of you this week, and I'll have said 7,000 to some of you and 9,000 to some of you. But the one thing I don't know is how many, who's using them, what the dependencies are, whether they're secure. We just don't know any of that. And having something that can give us that single pane of glass across that API estate is worth its weight in people not going to jail.
So we talked about why we are here and why have Kong chosen HSBC to talk today? Because we're certainly not going to talk about the technical level of detail that some of you want to hear, and you've heard some of that this morning, and you'll hear some more today. Again, we want to refresh you on the culture and technology journeys that we have to go on. And I think to illustrate that, I think, Jen, you're going to talk about our backstory.
Yeah, so if you want to know anything about HSBC, and you went to our public website and you tried to find the structure of our company, what you would find is this. This, genuinely, on our website, is described as a simplified organization structure. Now, what this shows is actually only a small part of the organization. This shows how the markets and the regions are organized. So you'll find UK ring-fence bank up there, you'll find the bank in the US, etc. What you won't find is the businesses. So if you think about this structure, times that by 3, so that's the wholesale business, the WPB business, which is the retail and wealth bank, and the markets and securities business, and then add a technology organization into the mix. And then you start to understand how complicated HSBC is. HSBC came from a bank many, many years ago in Hong Kong, and so HSBC used to stand for something, doesn't really anymore, but internally, we call HSBC the bank of how simple became complicated, because that is what we do. Now, if you think about, in every box on this screen, there is a CEO, there is a COO, there's a CIO, and all of those people have decision-making rights over what happens in their tech organization, because they are the risk holders, they're the people that go to jail if it goes wrong. And so for somebody like Gareth and someone like me, who sit in global roles, trying to affect change is really freaking hard, really hard. And that's all because of our complexity and just how big and unwieldy we are.
Thank you. I think to illustrate that, we are paid by one of the same boxes on this screen. They pay our wages. But this is probably physically as close as Jen and I ever get to each other, ever. We live in the same country. We don't live in the same city.
Yep.
But nothing brings us together. Our technology strategies take us further apart and further apart. I make decisions over here. No idea what Jen's doing over there.
Probably the same thing, but we're just not talking to each other about it.
So that really illustrates why we're here and why we are choosing Kong. Really, it's our first technology choice together with a common purpose, a common goal, and a common outcome. Nice segue into common goals and outcomes. Behind every technology strategy and business strategy is a set of values and principles. I won't drain them up, but from our chief executive officer, from our chairman, right down to our branch staff, right down to our call center operators, to us as VPs driving technology across our organization, we try and pivot around people, cultural values. You can see one on there which says, we succeed together. We've really got to do that, and it's very tough to do that. We've got to really try and succeed together. We take responsibility. That's something that we're very good at doing, is owning a problem, taking it through to the end. But if that problem is owned by Jen, she probably won't ask me what my problems are, and I won't ask Jen what her problems are. But we get it done, I think, is the most important value that we have in our organization. That means that, as well as some of those technology choices that we make in isolation, we are given autonomy to go out there and see what's in the marketplace. Yes, we are a global bank. Yes, we have somewhere between 12 and 15,000 APIs. Yes, we have 40,000 people working in technology. 40,000 people. What are they doing? They're not coding, they're not developing, they're not creating. What are those 40,000 people doing? So you can just see again, I'm sorry to labor the point, some of the challenges we have. So it helps to have a values-driven organizational purpose. It also helps to have a technology strategy. Everyone here has talked about technology strategies. We heard yesterday, we heard from Makia this morning, we heard from Rabobank as well. We've all got our own technology strategies. We are no exception. It's just that ours take a bit longer to deliver than some others. So Jen, you talk about one of our pillars of our technology strategy.
Thank you. Yeah. We've heard this week from quite a lot of you around your 2024 tech strategies. Ours is a 2027 tech strategy because we know it will take us that long to deliver it. And that's probably being optimistic, I would think. So we have in common with everyone sitting in this room, we have a strategy to digitize the organization. Some of you will be working at startups where you started as a digital organization. Some of you are transforming your organizations. We're transforming. We have to transform at scale. You saw how complex it was. We could keep talking about that. I think we've probably made the point.
Thank you. I'll keep making that point.
Yeah,
by the way.
yeah. So for us, this is all around creating and delivering quickly, easily, getting things in front of customers, because as an organization who are all about servicing customers, whether that is somebody taking some money out of an ATM or whether that is a very high net worth individual or a complex corporate customer, we're all about getting solutions in front of customers. The longer it takes us, frankly, the less profit we make from them.
Nice to bring it back to money.
Well, we're a bank. We can't pretend any otherwise, can we? It would be disingenuous. We talk about partnering with technology innovators. Historically, organizations like ours have worked with the IBMs of the world, the Oracles of the world. We've not really worked with the smaller organizations. Our internal processes make it difficult to do that sometimes. But our teams, particularly, so we sit really in the eye of the storm of this. We're working with smaller, faster, leaner organizations to deliver this quicker. The bank as a whole, though, has recognized that that's how we need to partner to move quicker. We need to think differently, and whether that's from a technology perspective or a cultural perspective or just an execution perspective, we have to be different. Those 40,000 people in tech all need to slightly change the way they work to deliver quicker. Resiliency and security. It kind of goes without saying that we need to be a resilient organization. Anything that happens within our services, if something goes down, our mobile apps do have periods where they're down. We don't want them to be, but we do. It's an issue for us. It's an issue for us because our customers can't get access to their money, but it's also an issue because the regulators are watching. Every time we're on escalation calls, and I was on one earlier on in breakfast, one of the first questions is this a reportable incident? Do we have to report that to the regulator? And of course, we never want to. We never want to do it because that brings a level of scrutiny that we can just do without. So we need our solutions to be resilient and secure like you wouldn't believe. And then lastly, speed and automation at scale. When you have 40-odd countries, when you have thousands of APIs, when you have millions and millions of customers and 40,000 technicians, you have to get things out quickly. Right now, if I want one of my teams to build and deploy a new API, it takes them weeks. It takes them weeks, and that's too long. It's too long to get something out in front of a customer. We need to be doing that in a matter of days. And this is part of our problem and our challenge.
Thanks, Jen. So, digital strategy, but how does that impact me? Selfishly, I'm commercial banking. This is my business. Yeah, and you can see some figures on there. We flow a lot of money around the organization or around the planet. We fund a lot of things. We don't build buildings. We don't sponsor, or we don't build airports, but you'll see our logos everywhere. Commercial bank, it's very important that we operate at a certain pace. It's very important that we operate at a certain speed to not miss opportunities. One of those opportunities is around digitization of our services. What I've just brought up on the screen is a challenge that we got to try and get a mobile app live on a cloud-native platform within 2 years. Yep. Sounds like a walk in the park or a cakewalk for some people out there, but we've never launched a new product. We've never launched a new mobile channel like this in 15 years. How do we do it in 2 years on a technology stack that's not proven, that's not understood, that's not known? But we like to take those challenges on. Look at one of our values. We get things done. But actually, our normal operating pace is like this.
It's actually quite quick.
This is how we work. And we all know how long it takes to turn an oil tanker or a cargo tanker. But when I looked at this graphic, when we did the rehearsal yesterday, I thought, actually, this message or this picture tells a lot of different stories. It tells you there's a cargo tanker or an oil tanker that's incredibly difficult to turn around or move or change course. But actually, what is on that cargo tanker? Containers. Yeah, I didn't use this because we're going to talk about Docker, by the way. Containers on that cargo tanker. That is our neural network. Yeah, because we are funding the contents of those containers. We are funding the people building it in one part of the world. We are funding the people requiring it on another part of the world. We're funding the shipping company making the containers. We're funding the shipping company's agent shipping the container. They are our neural network. They are our APIs talking across our organization. And if we cannot get those APIs talking, if we cannot get those containers talking, and what does our cargo tanker end up? It ends up on its side, blocking a canal somewhere. Yeah? We don't want that. Because we know what happens in the global supply chain when one container ship goes wrong. One container ship. So that's me. That's corporate banking, very complex, very stuffy organization. But Jen's got a refreshing view on retail banking.
Retail banking. So the wealth and personal bank at WPB is everybody from teenagers with their first bank account right through to high net worth individuals in the private bank and everything in between.
Do you mean like the Kong execs, high net worth individuals?
This is it. This is who I mean. Good point. And we exist to give people access to their money, to investments. We also exist to make sure that the owners of the companies who bank with Gareth as part of the organisation have somewhere to keep their loose change. Now, WPB is big and it's unwieldy. We're not as necessarily slow as some of the other parts of the organisation. What we are is chaotic. So we have many, many thousands of people working in our part of the organisation. 38 million customers, that's quite a lot of customers spread across the group, most of them in Europe and in Asia, but we have presence all over the world. And we have people building the same solutions for those customers across the world. If we asked any of our teams today, who is building, and we do this all the time, who is building in a new originations journey for checking accounts, there will be at least 6 teams doing the same thing. At least 6 teams. That's a number I plucked out of my head. It's probably low. Where we have a big challenge is we have to get our teams access to something that's already been built that they can reuse. We're about economy of scale, because that's the way that we get new things in front of our customers. Not the same thing re-engineered, not the same stop check, process. Do people still use checks? They do here, don't they? We've been re-engineering stop check for a long time. But we don't want to re-engineer the same. We want to put new in front of customers, and the only way we get to do that is to give them access to things that they can reuse. We're similar, though, to the wholesale world in that maybe we do the same old, but every now and again...
You can do funky stuff.
Every now and again, we do funky stuff. This is a payments application in Hong Kong called PayMe, which some of you may have come across. PayMe was started a few years ago in the same vein as Kinetic was in wholesale. It was a startup mentality. It sat separately to the bank. You don't have to be a HSBC customer to use it. It's been extremely successful. It has its challenges. We're trying to bring it a little bit back into the bank now so that we can support it, because we have the same resiliency challenges, the same security challenges with our sort of offshoots as we do with the main part of the bank. But we need to move fast as well from time to time, and there's all sorts of things that happen within my world that mean that this stuff is really important.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks.
Again, let's refresh on a digital strategy and what do we do and how do we make that different. Yeah, the first thing is, we look at fast, easy, digital, agile, and we see the blockers, resource hungry, resources. What do we do about that? Yeah, we need some tool out there to help us discover. We need some set of tools out there to help us reuse. My business, Jen's business, is all about reuse, reducing cost, taking our bottom line, making it more productive to reinvest into other things. So one of the most important things that we do is actually get a handle on what's out there.
At the moment, our API developers are very niche. They're in teams across the world. That's all they do. APIs, APIs, APIs. They're not skills that are readily available in the organization. They're not embedded within our agile teams. We have to transform our workforce. This is not just about a technology transformation. This is not just about implementing a new platform. This is about transformation of an entire workforce. What we're doing with Kong and the opportunity that that's giving us is it's giving us the chance to say, right, no more niche API skills. We want our full stack pods, our full stack engineers in those pods to build APIs when they need to build them. That's how we get the solutions out quicker.
Thank you. And we talked about resilience. We talked about somebody actually does go to jail here, and there's a big fine. But I think somebody else mentioned, when does the fine really warrant implementing if we're making so much money? What's the point? We'll just take a fine. So our regulators got a bit serious and said, okay, if a fine's not enough, how about going to jail instead and spending time behind bars? So that's why we need resilient, secure, robust APIs. We need to reduce and remove technical debt from our organization. We need that single pane of glass. We need to discover what's out there and make sure that it is secure.
Yep.
And finally,
at the moment, we have too much vendor lock-in. We are too reliant on the vendors that we have. As someone said earlier, is this still going to be the thing in a few years? Is the vendor that we're on still going to be the right decision? Decisions that we took 3, 4, 5 years ago are really hurting us now. And we can't do that again. We can't make the same decisions and the same mistakes and tie ourselves into one vendor, because we'll never be in a situation where we can keep moving faster. And the business don't want to keep funding technology transformation. They want to keep funding new business. Vendor lock-in is such a big problem for us, and it's one that we're solving. Here, anyway.
I feel like we're educating everybody on global problems of the world and how banks operate. That's not a pull on people to come and join HSBC.
Hey, though, if you want to challenge...
Put that disclaimer out there.
And we are hiring, but if you want to challenge, join a bank.
Yeah. Okay, we've managed to get almost all the way without even talking about our technology. That's how good we are at HSBC. Yeah? We talked about the problems, we haven't talked about solutions. So how do we bring Kong into that conversation? That's why we're here. We're here to talk about and reflect in the great products and services that Kong is building and developing. So where does that fit in our ecosystem? It fits in our ecosystem where we try and identify the single unit of measure. Yeah? We said we have between 12 and 15,000 of these things somewhere in the bank. Lots of them all doing the same thing, spread across 100 or so thousand containers on every flavor of container platform you could possibly imagine. So how do we get better at that? First of all, let's try and rationalize down on that container platform. We are making a big play for Kubernetes. Like, we've got some great feedback from the Kong team to say, actually, in some areas, Jen and Gareth, you're really, you guys are really pushing the envelope on your, on your Kubernetes strategy, on your multi-cloud strategy. I take that any day of the week because it really doesn't cover the cracks of elsewhere across our organization.
True.
Because without a development framework, without landing on a runtime for our microservices, it's pointless because we just proliferate these things wherever we want. That's where, for us, Kong comes in. And there are 3 Kong gorillas on this on the screen for a very clear reason. As all of the great stuff we've talked about, how Kong is trying to bring us together, we're still deciding to build 3 different types of Kong in our organization. It's that good. We don't want one.
But it's 3 rather than 23, so
Yes.
it's an improvement.
Yeah. So it's that good, we want 3 of them, right? We're choosing the Enterprise Gateway product for now. We are really, really impressed with what we see from Connect.
Yeah.
That might actually give us 1. I didn't think that number existed in our organization, but that might actually give us one day.
Yep.
But you can see, I talk about federated, I really talk about federated. Jen's got 1, I've got 1, and actually in my one, I've got 3. So there's 4, and then probably Jen's got more, and our other parts of the bank have got even more. So you can just see how this gets worse. And it gets further compounded when we talk about things that we have to do for our customers. A truly global multi-cloud strategy. Not 2 cloud partners, 4 public cloud and our on-premise. That's the Anthos stack we have at the bottom. Working very closely with Google to try and give us an internal Kubernetes platform. So you can see alone, even with a single unit of measure, the combinations of the 3 implementations of Kong, the combination of the 5 hosting regional choices and flavors we have. I think I worked out there was something like 120 choices that we have from developers to try and host a workload, look after a workload, and manage and contain that workload. But that's there for a reason. I think you were going to talk about why we have so many cloud partners.
We can't just partner with one cloud partner. Firstly, because we're a global organization, and there is no single cloud partner that every market in the world will work with. So for reasons that we probably all understand, Ali is on that list. The other reason is we're a highly regulated environment. Our regulators force us to have an exit path for all of our services. We have a concept of a stressed exit, which some of you will be familiar with if you work in that industry, where we have to take our critical applications and move them within 3 months. That's not a small piece of work. So whilst we've got multiple cloud partners, while we have multiple instances of Kong, what we need to do is to make sure that if I need to move my services and my applications onto Gareth's Kong, which hopefully there's a little bit of room for me to do that.
But I'm over here, sorry.
When you're over there, that it looks and feels as close to my implementation of Kong as possible, so that the APIs that I'm running will work with Gareth and vice versa, because when we need to do this, we need to do it quickly. We have issues, challenges with our on-prem environments because of capacity. The easy option for our teams is to put everything onto the internal Kubernetes platform because they don't have to think about data approvals. They don't have to think about X, Y, Z. These are difficult decisions. These are difficult things to do for an organization like ours. As Gareth's been talking about, this is big, this is complicated, lots of different choices. What we have to do with our strategy is make it as simple as possible for the guys on the ground.
And I think that great point just pulls us to the end of this. Right? Why Kong, why HSBC? Again, massively complex global organization, very small technology partner, could get lost in our ether. But actually, our choice of working with that partnership with Kong, our choice of working with that exec team, is really about simplifying our organization, putting a single unit of measure like an API and pushing that through our entire neural network, making sure that when I call my container ship, when I look at the contents of that container, they are what I expect them to be, and Jen is expecting to receive them at the other end because she's pulling the same information from the same either control plane or Kong service out there. So we are all talking the same language. Yeah. And I think that's a really important message for why Kong and why HSBC. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I think we're off.
Up. Well, we will be back here in about 10 minutes for the next session, which will be from IKEA here in the main stage. On track 2, you will have Introduction to the Kong Gateway Operator by Victor. On track 3, you will have Managing Kuma Tokens with HashiCorp Vault. And on track 4, you have WebAssembly in Kong using WASM-X. So enjoy a small break, and we'll see you in a bit.